Welcome to Your Mac Life for Wednesday, October the 16th, 2019, show number 1232, if I remember correctly. Thank you guys very much for being tuned in this Wednesday evening. As always, I'm not joined, not as always, I screwed that up. Melissa isn't here this evening. She's tired and not feeling well, so she's taking a bit of a break. She's just over there, lying down, watching Netflix. So I'm carrying the show tonight, so I'll need your guys' help to get me through this. As always, our good friend Jim Dalrymple will be joining us from The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim and I can talk some more about Apple in China. Tim Cook sent a letter to the Apple employees, which he knew would get released to other people, to the media, basically defending Apple's position with regards to the HK Live app and other issues surrounding Apple and their rock and a hard place in China. We'll talk more about that with Jim Dalrymple. We're also going to talk about smart locks. Do you have smart locks in your home, on your doors? Do you want smart locks? Do you have any interest in smart locks? I bring this up because a company of former Apple and I believe Google employees have come up with a new kind of smart lock. They all work pretty much the same way. Some are better than others. They all have different features, but a similar set. You use your phone, you use your iOS device to lock and unlock and get notifications and things like that. I don't know if it's certainly not something I need now. I don't know if it's something I'd ever need or ever want, especially considering these locks are $250 a pop. Do you want to spend that kind of money on a lock that you can open remotely? I certainly don't. We'll talk to Jim about those kind of things too. And Maps versus Maps, Apple Maps versus Google Maps. Do you have a preference? When I'm driving, I tend to prefer Waze, which obviously isn't Apple Maps versus Google Maps. I generally don't use Apple Maps very much. I tend to use either Google Maps or Waze. So let me know what you think, and we'll talk to Jim about that. And 'tis the season, especially for our friends in America, for fall colors. We'll talk about photography and how and what to shoot for fall colors. You folks in the East Coast are so much luckier than us here in the West, especially the Pacific Northwest. We have a lot of evergreen trees, so we don't really get a whole big, beautiful forest of fall colors. There's some spots here and there, but we don't get the gorgeous entire hill and mountainsides full of fall colors like folks in the East do. But we'll still talk about how to take those pictures. One of the things, this happened to me this past week, surprising absolutely no one. Yet another Apple cable has gone south on me. This has got to be the sixth Apple Lightning cable that's crapped out on me. It's split at the top. I don't know if you can see that on the video, but the cable has frayed so very frickin' typically. Here is the Nomad cable I'm using. Pretty much the same way, the same amount of time, every day, something's plugged in these two cables. And yet the Apple cable, this one, is from my iPhone 10. So it's less than 2 years old. And that thing has already gone to hell like that. And not only gone to hell like that, this is now officially dangerous. This is now an electrical hazard. If something were laying on this and you were charging it, or something, piece of paper or fabric or something along those lines, that could cause a fire in your home. Please, someone tell me that they think that it's as embarrassing for Apple to have these shitty-ass cables, possibly the most embarrassing thing they've had over the last any number of years. MacBand says, I'm charging my iPhone 11 with the cable that came with my iPhone 5. I understand that some folks have cables that last for long periods of time. That doesn't explain why I and many others have had cables that don't last 6 months to a year. This is the sixth Apple cable this has happened to. And it's obvious that it's a design flaw. This spot right there where they all break is poorly designed, poorly reinforced. Look at the Nomad cable. Nomad cable is reinforced at that point, and it costs less than Apple's cable. That's the embarrassment. By the way, what you can do is you can go to Nomad. I've got a yml.me/free cable. The nice folks at Nomad, let me just check that. yml.me/free cable. I want to check to make sure this is going to work. Yes, the folks at Nomad are offering a free cable. You literally donate $5 to their carbonfund.org, and they will send you a 1.5 meter lightning cable for your $5 donation. Do this. Take them up on this offer. This is a good deal. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everybody. Grab the free cable from the folks at Nomad. I like their cables. Just annoying that we have to go through this on such a regular basis, and how Apple keeps doing this kind of stuff. For those of you who follow me on Twitter, you would have seen this. Let me see if I can't blow this up so you guys can see this. So did you see this? This beautiful, gorgeous cabin on a lake. I don't know where it is. Could be Canada, could be America, could be anywhere. But it's very pretty. And this is just a thought experiment. This isn't something that they're actually offering or anything else along those lines. But Trevor Donovan said, solitude experiment. $10,000 to stay here for a month. No neighbors, no internet, no electricity, and no cell phone. You've got enough food and supplies for 30 days. You can bring books and a pet. Do you accept? And my first thought was, just 30 days? Dude, double that. Easy. Melissa and I were talking about this, and she said, well, do you, what about heating and cooking and things like that? Well, you could probably get camp stoves. Depending on the time of year, you could probably get away without any lighting whatsoever. If you're in the summertime, the sun sets at 9:30. That's plenty of time to do what it is you want to do. But yeah, that would be an easy thing to do. How about you guys? Would this be something you could do for $10,000? 30 days, no internet, no electricity. All you got is your books and a pet. Yeah, that's even if they didn't. MacMan says they probably have solar there. Even if they didn't have solar, again, if you're in the summertime in a pleasant enough environment, I think you could do it easily. I wouldn't need electricity. If you got candles, if you've got a camp stove, even if you don't have a camp stove, make me sandwiches for 30 days. Airdrop them in. I'm good. I'm fine. I can take the 30 days. But yeah, that's something that just, it's, someone else made a really good point that they don't see you couldn't do it for a year for $120,000, they said. And I agree. I couldn't do that for a whole year with no variation. Even if you gave me, more books or unlimited books, even if you gave me unlimited food, I couldn't do it for a year. But yeah, for a month, that'd be simple. That'd be ridiculously simple to do just for a month. One of the things I saw was really odd that this person jumped up on Twitter to tell me Catalina sucks. Okay, yeah, you're probably right. For a lot of people, Catalina does, in fact, suck. I said I have no experience with it, so I can't say. Lots of people are happy with it. Lots of people are unhappy with it, same as it ever was. This person said, half of my apps are no longer working. I can't even run Steam and work apps. And as soon as he said work apps, I immediately went to that thing that I always say to people. If you're using your computer for work to make money as your profession, as your job, you don't update any OS, Windows or Macintosh or Linux or anything, the day it gets released, the 2 days after it gets released, the week after it gets released. If you're using this device to make money, don't update it until you know that everything you need to do your work is going to work with the new system. I wrote, but you knew ahead of time that they wouldn't work, right? The 32-bit ones. And this person said, to be honest, I didn't know which ones were 32 and which ones are 64-bit. Does it really matter not to let 32-bit apps work anymore? As soon as I read that, I realized I was talking to a child. Someone who just, I don't know what work you do, but an adult knows not to update these sorts of things. And it's been reported for 2 years that this was going to happen. That these apps, 32-bit apps, were going to go away. And maybe on next week's show, we'll explain the difference between 32 and 64-bit apps and what the difference is. But basically, Apple has said from Catalina forward, if your app was coded in, for lack of a better term, the 32-bit space, it's not going to work in Catalina. And not only did Apple say that 2 years ago, they said it last year. And in Mojave, not every time, but most of the time when you opened up one of these apps, a warning would pop up that said, this app may no longer work going forward. Please contact the developer. And this happened with Apple's own apps, QuickTime 7, which I use every day. It happens with an app called Levelator that I use to make the MP3 files for the show. It happens with older versions of Adobe Lightroom. A bunch of apps had this happen with. So if this is happening to you, then you pay attention to those warnings, you do some research, you find out what's going on, and then you make the decision of whether or not you're going to update to these kinds of new apps. But for someone to say, I didn't know, Apple did everything they possibly could. In this regard, I have no sympathy for you because Apple did everything they could reasonably expect to do. They told you 2 years ago it was going to happen. Last year they told you again. Almost every time you open up these apps in Mojave, you got a warning. Dozens of websites reported it. We reported it on the Loop. We talked about it here in the show. Apple can't do anything more than that. So if things didn't work out the way if Catalina sucks and if half your apps are broken, look in the mirror. I'm sorry. This one's on you. MacMan says, I don't update my machines right away. This iMac is still in Sierra. This iMac of mine is on Mojave and probably going to stay there until I buy a new machine. There's nothing in Catalina that compels me to upgrade, that I need right away, that I'm willing to take the risk of things breaking. And I might at some point. I've already got it set up. I haven't done it yet. I've got it set up so that I've got a partition on my hard drive where I would install Catalina when I feel like doing it. I just don't feel like doing it right now. I don't see the need to do it right now. Later on the show, in our Starting Point Photography segment, we're going to talk about shooting fall colors. You folks who are lucky enough to live in the East Coast, got a beautiful array. We'll talk about what kinds of things you can do, what kind of things you shoot in the fall, and why the fall, I think, is one of the best times to shoot photos. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. All that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here on the show this evening. And our phone, as always, we've got our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm
Sorry,
good.
I was just having a sip of beer there.
Well, that's not unusual.
When I say a sip, I didn't mean a sip.
Yeah, exactly. This whole Apple China HK map thing is not going away, should it?
Oh, my God. You know, you sent me the tweet today, and who was it? Caroline?
Yeah, Caroline Milanese over at
Yeah.
Creative Partners.
Yeah, and she's really, really good.
Yep.
I really like her. And, I think what she said in her article is pretty much what we said last week, that unfortunately, Tim has brought this one on himself.
Yep.
He held himself up. And then you have to figure, okay, it's China. And all of a sudden, does that go away? And it is fine to say that Tim should stand up to China, but we agreed last week that Tim's responsibility is to the shareholders.
Yes, absolutely.
And I don't think that he can. I mean, if he does, then Apple is going to go down. I don't mean like they're finished.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to go down in the market. And that's not what Tim's responsibility is. Tim's responsibility is not to be, the moral leader of the world. His responsibility, I guess, is certainly to be the financial leader of the company and to be the moral leader of the company. But, you can't, I don't think, have your morals in every country around the world.
True.
And it's an unfortunate thing, but I don't see that if Tim did stand up to China, and this is a political mess.
Yes.
Tim shouldn't be in politics. Tim should be in business. And as unfortunate as it is, in my opinion, that Tim put the company in this position, I think he has to go with company first.
The problem is that, and I've said this from the very beginning, I think I may be looking at it through rose-colored glasses, but I think Steve Jobs, for the most part, stayed away from these kinds of issues in general. But Tim Cook hasn't, and to a large degree, we've patted him on the back about that, with Apple's environmental stand, with their stand on, at least in America, human rights, in particular LGBTQ rights, and other issues along those lines. And we've all stood in the sidelines and gone, good for you, Apple, good for you. The problem is when those issues that Apple has stood for come up against the cold, hard reality of both politics and business, Apple is then caught in a situation of their own making because you can't please everyone all the time. And your morals can't be situational. That's the problem I have with this action by Apple. They say that we are a moral company and we will do moral things, but as soon as some other organization says, no, you can't do that, they don't stand behind those moral values. They go, oh, sorry, okay, we'll just change our morals in this particular situation.
No, I don't think that they're changing their morals, and this is such a tough situation. I think that they fundamentally, Tim still believes what he believes, and I do, not to use the word too much, but I do believe him.
Yeah,
that he stands for these things.
I agree.
But in the U.S., if something was going on, and something has with gay rights and things like that. He has stood and, said that this is wrong and this is, we're going to stand up with these people. But let's not forget, even though Steve was very, he didn't get as involved as Tim did on a personal level,
Yeah.
but Steve is the one that started all the environmental efforts for Apple, and started these environmental assessments and everything like that. There was still Apple employees at the Gay Pride Parade in San Francisco,
Yeah.
and I mean, but Steve didn't let his personal views cloud what the company's views were. I mean, now that you get a dividend, I remember Steve at meetings when people said, "When are you going to give a dividend?" And Steve would just say, "I'm not."
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so move on. So, they are two different people in what they do, but I do believe that they both had Apple's best interests at heart. And Tim's um, stance on privacy, that it is a basic human right, I think he's right with that. But now you're dealing with different countries around the world. And, unfortunately for Apple at this point, they hit on China. And that's a bad one. So is Tim doing the right thing? I have to look at this from what I believe Tim's ultimate responsibility is. And that is as the leader of a company. He's not the leader of a moral organization. He's the leader of a company.
Yep.
His responsibility has to be financial to the shareholders. So he has to do whatever he can to keep that money rolling, because ultimately that's how he's going to be judged.
Now, that having been said, and I agree with you up to a point, Tim Cook's letter that he knew would get out to the media, because everything he writes is going to. So keep that in mind. It wasn't written just for Apple employees. It was written to send out to the rest of the world. But the statements he makes in the letter seem kind of iffy. As what's his name? HK Map Live points out that there is no evidence that this app was used to target individual police officers, as Cook claimed in his note to the employees. The other statements that Cook made in the employee letter had no basis in fact. There's no evidence that those things happen, and that made me feel kind of odd. If Cook had simply said, "Look, the Chinese government wants us to shut this app down. We don't have a choice. We do a lot of business in China. This would hurt, if not destroy, our company. We have to pull it." If he had said that, we ought to have gone, "Well, that sucks." But he didn't. He went further and tried to justify the removal of the app that they had reinstated only a few days before, and he justified it with really specious arguments. Did you have a problem with Cook's letter?
Okay, so I have to think that Tim was provided with some evidence that these things were going on. Now, who provided that, I don't know.
Cook says it was the Hong Kong Cybersecurity and Technology Crime Bureau.
Okay. Then he was provided with some evidence that this stuff was going on. Now, is that breaking the rules of the App Store? And if it is, then Tim was justified in doing what he was doing. He also felt the need to explain the decision to do what he was doing. So, I mean, there's so many ways that you can look at this, and I sigh because I just know that there is no right answer to this.
That's right.
So, and that's why I have to default to his financial responsibility. So, I wish that there were a better, more defined answer that you could give. And I know everybody is on against him on this, against the decision. I understand that, and I'm not saying I'm with Tim on the decision, but I think if you look at it from the perspective of his responsibility, then you have to do it. You have to.
And also keep in mind that Apple's not the only company that's doing this. This is not happening in a Apple One Infinite Loop or One Cupertino Way, whatever the new address is. Apple Park. That's it. Apple Park. Bubble.
One Cupertino way.
Just,
I'm glad you don't need my street.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. Vans, Versace, Viacom, TikTok, Tiffany, Swarovski, Ray-Ban, Nike, NBA, Mercedes-Benz, Marriott, The Gap, Delta Airlines, Coach, Disney, Cathay Pacific, Audi, American Airlines, and the list goes on and on and on of other companies who are in various ways, shapes, and form being told effectively what to do by the Chinese government in order to save, prop up their relationship with not only the government but those consumers. And that's part of the problem, is that it's that consumer market that everybody wants a part of, that everybody wants a piece of, because it's so massive. If this was the country of Panama, nobody would care. If this was Canada, nobody would care. If the Canadian government said, hey, Apple, everything you give to us to sell to Canadians has to be in 3 different versions of French, then, or else you can't sell it, the Americans would go, no, no.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, and this is why it comes down to one thing, and it's the responsibility to be financially responsible.
Yep.
That, I mean, I don't think anybody's making any bones about the fact of what this is about. You know, I really don't. I mean, we all know what it's about. So I just don't know what the solution is.
Yep.
I mean, if Tim stood up to China at this point, and China, let's say China blocked Apple so that they could not sell any products in the company at all, and Apple fell, he would deserve to be fired. The shareholders and the board should say, you know what, Tim, you're not keeping up with your responsibilities, you're out.
Yep.
They would be well within their rights to do that.
And it wouldn't even be if Apple blocks sales. Remember, a lot of Apple's manufacturing is done in China too. If somehow the Chinese government blocked that, you can't use Foxconn, you can't use our manufacturing technologies, expertise, locations, plants. Apple would be dead. They wouldn't be able to make iPhones for at least 6 months to a year, and that would kill the company and obviously also kill Cook's job.
Now, if Tim wanted to leave Apple and become, have a foundation where he, talked and tried to help companies and world leaders and stuff like that, that's a different situation. That's completely different. Then Tim could stand up and say, oh, what you're doing is wrong. Totally different than being the CEO of one of the most powerful companies in the world.
Does that mean that Tim Cook should shut up about this moral obligation stuff?
Well, that's another thing, isn't it?
Yep. Because it's gonna start ringing hollow. It's not just about this issue, but it's going to start ringing hollow when he's standing up for human rights abuses in America or in Britain or in other countries, but doesn't stand up for human rights abuses in Hong Kong and in China. I think you're going to see at least Cook in his personal statements, in his public statements, not beat that drum nearly as much, because this is going to come back to haunt him. This will go away. This will definitely be forgotten about inside of a month. But if he starts talking about other things, if he's at a commencement speech next May in front of a bunch of students, he starts talking about how important human rights are, this is going to jump back up and bite him in the ass.
No, I totally agree with you. And that's why I say I don't know that there is a right answer to this. If I was that smart to be able to give you an answer to this, then I should be the one that's running the company.
There's no way they would
No.
allow that. It'd be heavy metal everywhere. MacMan makes an interesting point in the IRC chat room. He says, if China pulled that card, they'd be slitting their own wrists too. Do you agree with that?
Well, see, that's why I don't think China would ever allow them, or I'm sorry, I don't think China would ever force them to out of production. I don't think that would ever happen. But they could limit the sales,
Yep.
which would continue to hurt Apple. So I'm not sure which part of that MacMan was talking about slitting their own wrists. But the manufacturing, I don't think that they would do that because they want, their factories running and running good. But the sales part, yeah, I mean, they could inflict some pain on Apple real fast.
But they could also completely eliminate Apple's ability to manufacture in China, thereby throwing out of work millions of Chinese.
Right. That's why I don't think that they would do that.
But I'm saying they could, and it wouldn't hurt them one little bit. The Chinese are an authoritarian communist government. They're not beholden to the people the way they are in America and Canada and our Western democracies. If Trudeau did something that made the majority of Canadians pissed off, we'd vote him out of office. They can't do that in China. In China, they would simply take the hit. You got to remember the Chinese history. It goes back 5,000 years. They do long plans of 50 and 100 years. They went through the Cultural Revolution where Mao Zedong literally killed millions of people. This would be no big deal to the Chinese government if they cut Apple off and somehow it affected the Chinese economy. It wouldn't. It would hurt them, but they don't care.
Maybe while we're talking, MacMan can elaborate a bit more on how China would be.
He says, I mean, it would hurt their own economy pretty badly if they forced out Apple. And he's right, they would, but they don't have a problem with doing that.
And I don't want this to turn into politics, but what they're doing with the trade war right now shows that they don't care about that.
Yep, exactly.
They trash their own economy already.
Yep.
Just to prove a point.
Yep, that's right.
So,
not that big a deal for them.
Not that big a deal.
Let's move.
I still don't think, for the record, that they would limit manufacturing.
Yep.
Because that would be a bad show.
Yep.
On their part for their people, and they do have to keep up appearances, but they would hurt Apple on sales because that also keeps up the appearance that they want.
That's their nuclear option, but no company is going to call their bluff on that. There's no way that any company would go to that brink, because China would warn you ahead of time that, hey, if you keep doing this, if Apple had left the HK Map Live app up, China would have escalated a little further. There'd be some more penalties, and then at some point, if Apple continued, they would threaten that, and no CEO, no company is ever going to push China to that level and risk that nuclear option.
Nope, you're right.
Let's move on. Former Apple employees are making a deadbolt you unlock with your phone, and it's backed by Walmart. Now, this is not an unusual device. There's all kinds of things out there that you can do this functionality with. This is getting a little notoriety because it's former Apple employees or worked with HomeKit. Called Level Lock. It's $250 a lock. Is this something you have any interest for there? Would this work on your shopping cart under the bridge?
Well, I was just going to say, I don't really have walls or doors under the bridge. So, I would love to put a lock on and lock the bridge up top so that cars couldn't drive over at night and keep waking me up. So, I mean, like you said, this is nothing really new. And I was surprised that it got so much attention. And seemingly just because some ex-Apple people were doing it.
Yep.
And, I mean, that does weigh into some things because you think, well, they have the type of user experience that I really want. So, you think that maybe that's something that I would like to own. But Do we want to own that? I mean, well, who was it? Serenity Caldwell, ended up blocking herself out of the
Yeah,
house or
that's
something.
right.
When she was testing one of these
Yep.
things before. I mean, that's just craziness. I'd just smash a door. I'd be so pissed off.
Did you ever do that when you were a kid? Break in your own house, break a window to get into your house?
So, I had two different systems to break into my own house when I was a kid. So yeah, I had two different systems to break into my house,
Yeah.
and ultimately, I don't think that there was a time when one of the two didn't work.
Yeah.
So I was pretty adept at being east. I'll tell you. Yeah.
I distinctly remember being boosted up into our balcony on the second floor by my mom to be able to get into the house because the sliding door was left open because she had locked herself out. But it's not a usual occurrence. It's no more, no less usual than if you have a key, but it's still a possibility.
Yeah. Sure.
The advantage of these things is that kind of remote unlocking for your kids or for a delivery guy. There's a guy coming in to do your linoleum floors, and you can let him in and know when he leaves. So there are advantages to these things, but I see this as, and I don't mean this to be as disparaging as it sounds, really an upper middle class white person problem. You know what I mean? It doesn't
Well,
seem like it's the problem of us poor folks.
I mean, I have a key to my place because I need a key to get in, and I think at some point when you buy a new house, it's going to come with these types of locks,
Sure,
whether
yeah.
you like it or
Yeah.
not. So um, when you say, is this something that you would like or would you use? I think it's going to be forced upon us
No.
at some point. So you buy a new place, whether it be an apartment, a condo, a house, um, the smart home is going to become bigger and a bigger part of those plans in the coming decade for sure, 5 years. So are we gonna do it? Well, we're not going to have a choice.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. We're not going to have a choice. Technology is going to be there. It's going to be part of what we do.
But at least for your description, it's going to be fairly voluntary. In other words, you're going to buy a new house, or you're going to build a new house, and you're going to have these locks installed, or you're going to buy a house and install these locks. I heard the story, I don't know if you heard about it, about 3 months ago, of an apartment building in New York City where the landlord installed all these locks in people's homes without their permission, without their.
Oh, geez.
And the problem became the landlord could then lock and unlock your door without you knowing about it. You didn't have control over these kinds of locks. That's the concern I have with smart locks. Again, being of the poor class of landlords in apartment buildings installing these things, being able to check on the comings and goings of their tenant. Not so much in the home, but more so in apartment buildings where these kinds of things can be tracked by people that you don't know who's doing the tracking.
Right. I get that part, but anybody that knows anything about apartments and landlords knows that they have keys to your place anyway.
Yep, that's right. That's right.
So now they wouldn't be able to track when you left and stuff like that, but still they had keys to your place. you know,
The other
I mean,
the other issue with these kinds of locks is the idea. A lot of them, I don't know if this one in particular is, but a lot of them are connected to the internet because
yeah,
you should
I
be
know
able
you
to.
don't like that.
I hate that. I hate this whole IoT thing. There's too many stories of these things being hacked. Most of the stuff, the electronics, it comes from. Speaking of China, comes from one particular company in China, which has been shown to have their chips to be easily hacked by outsiders. I would definitely not activate that feature of a smart lock. I like the Bluetooth ability. I like the idea of a door that opens on its own. That would be nice when you're carrying groceries, you're carrying in a package, you push a button, your Apple Watch knows you're getting close to the door opens up on its own.
Yep.
Those kind of things I like, but I don't ever want to have a device that can be hooked into the internet whether it be a lamp or a lock or a garage door, that is imminently hackable. There's nothing on their website that says anything about these kinds of Chinese circuitry, but the vast majority of these things come from, again, this one company in China that has been shown to be hacked, and I would never allow any IoT device in my house like that.
You know, and I always try and look at these things and say, is it because I'm getting old that I don't like this? You know, I'll be honest. I really do. I try and look at this stuff and say, okay, am I just being weird here? Or, you know, am I going to come home someday and somebody will have hacked, you know, my make of lock and just walked in and, you know, taken everything he wants? I mean, is that really a thing?
Yep. And is it more or less of a thing than someone just kicking your door in and walking in? You know, it's just
right.
But at least with these smart locks, if someone kicked your door in, the theory is you'd get a warning. There'd be a notice on your phone, no matter where you were, that there had been access to your home. A home security system does the same sort of thing, so I don't think it's that much of a concern.
Well,
depends where you live,
you know,
obviously.
I mean, that's all part of it, and that's all part of what we live in now. You know, is it worth doing? I go back to my original statement. I don't think in a few years we're going to have a choice.
Yeah. Unless
you're in, you know, an older home that hasn't been updated. But I think once homes are going to start to be updated, these whole home things are just going to be part of the construction.
Yeah, possibly.
So,
Dave Mark over in the Loop posted a story. Which do you prefer, Apple Maps or Google Maps? You took this survey, I assume. What do you use most often, Apple Maps or Google Maps?
So, you know, this is a very funny time for this question to come up. What I prefer. So I prefer Apple Maps. And I have used Apple Maps pretty much exclusively for the past little while. But every once in a while, I'll fire up Google Maps. I'll fire up Waze. I don't think I like Apple Maps.
Yep.
And it's gotten a lot better for me in the way that the directions go. That's one. Anytime I used to travel to a city that I didn't know, I would use Google Maps because it would be much better in saying, you know, in 1 mile, be in the left lane and turn left.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but when you're in a city you don't know and it just says, you know, in 1 mile, turn left, and it will say like be in the second lane from left.
Yeah.
You know, because then you're going to make a right, you know, right away. So it would know that you should be in the second lane. Well, Apple is now caught up to all of that.
Yep.
I think the Apple appearance is much better. I'd love to use CarPlay. So, you know, all of that is great. Now, I just went on a trip to New Mexico.
Oh, cool.
To Los Alamos.
Wow.
And
I'll bet you took some really shitty pictures, didn't you?
I took some amazingly shitty pictures. I mean, these are amazingly shitty pictures. So, yeah. I think they should have a shitty picture contest instead of like the best iPhone contest.
And you know what? Here we go. Hashtag, instead of shot on iPhone, shit on iPhone. There you go.
Yeah.
You start that.
I mean, I'd win that hands down every year. So when I got there, unfortunately for me, I had just installed the 13.2 beta developer, and it didn't allow for any voice alerts in Maps.
Yeah.
Nor did it allow for your alarm to go off. There was no verbal or vocal or audio cues at all. So I left the airport in a rental car, no idea where I was going.
Yep.
And I'm just driving along, and all of a sudden I realized, you know, like I'm in the middle of nowhere
Yeah.
outside of Albuquerque at this point. And I have no idea where I am. And I realized that Maps wasn't giving me any vocal or other types of cues
Yeah.
to turn.
Yeah.
So I just drove straight, and then I'm out in the tundra, in New Mexico. So then I turned on Google Maps, and it worked.
Yeah.
It gave me the cues, and off I went. So I used Google Maps the whole time I was there.
Do you ever use
And
Waze?
I have used Waze as well. And, I suppose Waze is good in traffic. But ultimately, and I just installed the new beta when I get home, as would turn out. And the voice cues now work in Maps.
Yeah.
So if that had worked, I would have been using Maps the whole time.
See, because I ride a motorcycle, I don't need or use any of the voice cues. So I have all that stuff turned off, even when I'm in the car. But I prefer Waze, if only because it seems to give me a lot more information about what's going on in the road. Waze can be so specific as it will tell me that there's a pothole in the road in front of me. And as a motorcyclist, that's the kind of stuff I want to know. I want to know where the accident is. Maybe I can go down the travel lane to get on an off ramp, or cops and that kind of stuff that I don't really seem to get very much of when it comes to Google Maps or Apple Maps. So for me, I prefer Waze. But when I do need directions, and for whatever reason, usually it's because I've tapped an address in Messages and Apple Maps opens up automatically, I'll use Apple Maps. But I'm still never really comfortable or happy with Apple Maps, certainly not voluntarily using it the way I prefer to use Waze. I use Google to find distances. So if I want to find out how far it is to go from, say, here to Whistler, British Columbia, I'll use Google to give me that information, and to find a coffee shop nearby and things like that. I find Google Maps to work faster than Apple Maps, and even more accurately than Apple Maps in those situations.
Yeah, I don't find Apple Maps gives me a lot of information when it comes to finding restaurants and stuff.
Yep.
I certainly agree with that. Waze is good, I think, in traffic if you're looking for the fastest route around, skirting around traffic. But then, you find yourself going through neighborhoods all through stuff, and maybe some people may not like that. I know the neighborhoods don't like that.
That's right, yeah.
So, I usually stick to Apple Maps. And, I say that I use Apple Maps 99% of the time. Well, the 1% is when I'm trying out the other ones to see what route they will take me in a town that I know.
Yeah.
So you're going to take me to, my local pub, which is usually done by Lyft. But now, I'm going to, how would Google take me on this route as opposed to Apple Maps?
Yeah.
Is it different, and which one ultimately is better and faster? And Waze is usually totally different. It has me scooting through neighborhoods all over the place to go to these things. So yeah, but typically I'd use Apple Maps.
Monty says, I don't like the UI in the Waze iOS app. And that's interesting because a lot of this stuff is based on UI. I don't mind the Waze UI. I'm not saying it's the best or better than anything else. I just happen to prefer it. So I think a lot of this stuff is based on preference. I would like, we've talked about this before, to be able to set Waze as my preferred mapping software. So when I click on something in iMessage, it doesn't automatically send me to Apple Maps. It sends me to the app that I want to use. So, and then the other thing is that none of the apps do is allow me to plan a trip on my computer and then send it to the app on my iOS device, which is something I'd really love to be able to do, and why I still use a dedicated GPS for long distance trips, because it allows me to customize this trip rather than just going from point A to point B. It allows me, my TomTom GPS actually has a curvy road option where you tell it, I want to go from here to there, but don't take me in a straight line. And it'll go, okay, and you just go all to hell and gone. You just wander all over the place until it gets you to the location. That's the kind of thing a motorcyclist wants to do. I don't want to go on the interstate for 4 hours. Take me on the windy, twisty back roads for 4 hours. It's a lot more fun.
You know what? You should let me plan a trip for you. I'll be on a Greyhound.
That's right. Why am I in Saskatchewan? What the hell? How come I can see Winnipeg from Manitoba? What the hell? No, this is the most boring trip ever.
Yeah.
For those folks who aren't familiar with Canadian geography, Saskatchewan and Manitoba are our version of the Great Plains of Kansas and that kind of thing. It's just flat. If it weren't for the curvature of the earth, you could see Dallas. It's just awful.
Yeah. On a Greyhound bus.
Oh, Lord, I've done that trip too. Jesus.
Yep.
Shoot me in the head.
Not the greatest thing in the world
God,
right there.
No. Just before we let you go, the just late this afternoon, Netflix and investors released Netflix in a letter to investors released on Wednesday. It said new entrants in the streaming space, including Apple TV, will help accelerate what it believes to be an inevitable shift away from traditional linear television. Do you think Netflix is right in that, or do you think all this stuff is going to coexist peacefully?
I don't think there is any peace in the television market at this point. I really don't. I mean, Netflix has proven that they have the money to get into this, and they have the audience to get into this. So if Netflix starts, thumping its chest, I'd be worried. I would.
I don't think.
Do people really like traditional television anymore?
That's a good question. So. I think it depends on how you use it.
I think it's more. I mean, people like sports, and I think the most watched television are the series that are coming out from and maybe these are more traditional stations, but like FX and Showtime and HBO, they're owned by traditional stations. Yeah, those are the ones that are making the best programs. And okay, those are the ones out of the regular TV, but then you have Showtime and Hulu, and I'll throw Apple in there for now because their shows look pretty good. That are making the shows that people really want to watch and they want to binge watch.
Yep.
So I'm not sure that people are really, up on traditional TV.
I think traditional TV is used more by and I don't want to be this again disparaging, a certain age group or certainly a certain group of people who don't want to deal with Hulu and Netflix and Disney and all that kind of stuff. It's just give me TV. I don't care what it is. Just give me TV and I'll watch whatever's on Thursday night at 8 o'clock on NBC.
Yeah, older people will have, and I know this for a fact, so I'm not trying to say older people are boring, but older people will tend to have their shows, whether it's Magnum or NCIS or whatever. It's on Thursday night. I don't know what a DVR is, and I don't care. That's what I'm going to watch tonight at 9 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And they watch it just like they always have. So, but those people are dying off. So
I don't think Netflix is going to be hurt by any subscription fatigue that comes along because Netflix right now has the biggest back catalog of all the streaming service providers. As Netflix says, cable TV is still, traditional TV is still bigger than all the service streaming providers combined. And I think that's going to tail off, but I don't think it's ever going to be the majority of customers are going to be on Netflix, for example. The majority might be on streaming services, but I don't think Netflix is ever going to have the majority of everyone because they don't have every show. I think there's always going to be competition, which is good. Disney announced, on Monday, they tweeted out every single show. They had a 3-hour tease of everything they were going to post when Disney Plus happens, and that got a lot of people excited. There's a lot of movies there that you want to watch, TV shows and movies you never even heard of that Disney's going to be releasing, stuff that went straight to video that you never ever watch. But I don't think that Netflix has a lot to worry about, even though they did announce lower subscriber numbers. They're not going to lose. I don't think they're going to lose anything to Apple TV. They might lose some to Disney Plus, and I think that's going to be people with younger children will give up Netflix in order to get Disney Plus to save money. But I don't think people are going to be leaving Netflix en masse for these other services. If they leave Netflix, it's because Netflix isn't providing value for them.
I believe that it's going to be Netflix plus something.
Yes, I agree.
It's not going to be I'm ditching Netflix. Yeah,
Yep.
I absolutely agree with you. Yeah.
Now Netflix has to be worried though, or careful actually, that they don't price themselves out of the market. Because every time they have a price increase, people go, am I watching this enough? Every time they cut back on services, we're going to increase the price $1 and you can only watch it on 2 different devices now. Or you can only watch it in HD and not 4K. If they start nickel and diming customers too much and the other services provide something of equal to or greater value, they could lose customers. But right now, I think Netflix is the king of the hill.
There is no doubt in my mind that Netflix is the king of the hill. And I think that this live TV stuff that everybody has isn't working.
Yeah.
And I think that the DirecTV and AT&T prove that. I tried Hulu Live TV.
Yep.
And it was just kind of a pain in the ass,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, I didn't really... So I cut my subscription back to just the basic, no ads, Hulu,
Yep.
and really enjoyed that, because then I was doing the binge watching of some shows, and I got to see the great Hulu content, and then really that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
It's the same as Netflix. But did I give up Netflix? No.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't.
That's right.
So I can't see it happen.
Now that Jim's agreed with me, we can go. Thanks for saying. Jim's got his own podcast called the Dalrymple Report. It's on the iTunes store. Check it out. Subscribe. This is thanks very much, Jim, for being on the show.
Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks, buddy. See you.
Bye.
Yeah, I can't see our family. We don't have TV. We only get streaming services and downloadable content. So for us, even when Apple TV comes, and for $5 a month, we'll definitely sign up for Apple TV. But we're not getting rid of Netflix. There's no way we're getting rid of Netflix. And because we're in this backwater of Canada, we may not have access to a lot of the other types of content. So we're not a good example of that. But we just don't watch enough TV shows, series type things to make it worth the while. We'll watch a lot of movies, but not nearly as many series and stuff. I do get, I'll download it from illicit sources. MacMan said Google Maps can do that, if I recall. I think, MacMan, what you're saying is Google Maps can do the itinerary, but they can only do it for 10 places. You only get 10 locations that you can then send off to your phone. And on a 4-day trip, I need more than 10 places. I'll need more than 10 places in the first few hours. I have to know gas stations, because gas stations you have to get to much more on a bike. A car. When we went to Nelson this past summer, Grand Forks was 9.5 hours away. In a car, you fill up here in Gibson's, then you fill up again halfway through, you can get to Grand Forks. But on a motorcycle, you're filling up at least twice as much. So I would need 4 fuel stops. I need to know where those fuel stops are. You don't want to get caught in betwixt and between on a motorcycle and running out of gas. So I would have at least needed 4 fuel stops. I would need at least 2 or 3 spots for eating. There's 5 different places along the way that you want to stop and sightsee. The Lytton Slide, the Manning Park, dozens of places along the way just in that first day of traveling. So yeah, having only be able to use 10 is not a good thing. The other thing about dedicated GPSs that I really like, I've talked about before in the show, and you can't do this with other apps, is I can go online and do a search for best motorcycle roads, and they'll be listed them off in geography: Canada, U.S., East Coast, West Coast, Pacific Northwest, and I can download other people's maps of trips they've gone on, and they'll have these waypoints on the file. I think it's a GPZ file that can then be imported into my dedicated GPS, and I can follow their route and their information. It'll pop up and say there's a gas station here, a really great burger joint here. Don't go down this road. It's gravel. That kind of stuff. So those kind of things are the stuff that Apple Maps, Google Maps, Waze don't do, and I'm surprised they don't. One of the downsides of all these apps is they tend to take you from A to B in the most direct route possible. Maybe you don't want to. I granted, the vast majority of people want to do exactly that with their GPS. They just want to get from point A to point B in the most efficient way possible, especially if you're in a strange location. But what if you want to explore? Like I said, my TomTom GPS literally has a windy road section. I'll say I want to go from point A to point B, and then I'll choose the option of windy road. And we'll go, okay. If you go from point A to point B in a straight line, it'll take you 2 hours. If you do this route, it'll take you 4 hours. And I'll go, okay, let me do 4 hours. So those kinds of things are those additional features I'm surprised these other companies haven't added in order to differentiate their products from each other. It seems like all these companies, Apple, Google, and Waze is Google, only see GPS use as directions for A to B. They don't seem to think outside the box and think that, hey, maybe people want some different things other than that. When we come back from this break, we're going to talk about shooting fall colors with your iPhone or your DSLR and those kinds of things. All that and much more coming up. This is your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. Thank you guys very much for joining me here this Wednesday evening. One of the things I miss most about back home for me is Halifax, Nova Scotia. One of the things I miss most about that is fall, is the changing of the leaves, the fall colors that we get in Nova Scotia. And it's a real shame because here in the West Coast, it's beautiful. We've got spectacular mountains and wonderful scenery and coastal waters and things like that. But because we're mostly evergreen trees in this general area, we don't get a lot of the beautiful fall foliage that our friends back east get. And I'm not sure about Europe. Folks who are in Europe, let me know if you get the same kind of fall foliage that is so well known in other places. But it's a real shame for us here in the Pacific Northwest in particular. We just don't get the kind of lovely orange and reds and yellows that the folks back east get. And not even in the southern United States too. Here's the fall foliage map for today. I'm going to just show this to you guys. And that's where the predicted visual planning guide for the changing of the leaves is happening now in America. I've never seen something similar to this for the U.S., for Canada or Western or Eastern Europe. So what you want to do, one of the reasons why I find fall to be the best time of year when it comes to fall colors is the sunrise and sunset. In the summertime, sunrise is way too early in the morning. It's at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. I ain't getting up at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning in the summertime. And sunset is way too late in the evening. It's 9 o'clock, 9:30. It's too late. Whereas in the fall, sunset is around 6:30 this time of year, right? I think right now, 6:30 is around the time the sun is setting. And sunrise is around 7:38, again, depending on where you are. So those are the kinds of time frames you can go out for a sunrise shoot on the weekends, or a sunset shoot after work on a Tuesday. Much easier to do those kinds of things around those sunrise and sunset times in the fall than it is in the winter, and certainly in the summertime. And because of the quality of light, as we've always said, the best time, especially for beginners, to shoot is sunrise and sunset. That's the golden hour, the half hour before and after sunrise and sunset. The light will be the most golden then. It'll have that different, it's called color temperature. The light skews more towards that end of the spectrum in that time of day. And because you've got these trees that are reds and yellows and oranges, they sort of reflect those colors. And those colors are more vibrant because of that sunrise and sunset. We, each morning we get up, and Melissa and I, our wakey times around 6:30 in the morning. It's full dark. And we lie in bed with our little coffee cups, and we can see the sun rise. The sun rises on our right-hand side as we're lying in bed, and we have a window directly in front of us, and we can see the sun as the sun is rising from our right. We can see the hills, the Mount Elphinstone, and the trees around us lighting up with the golden glow of that sunrise. It's a wonderful way to wake up. So if you wanted to, that would be a great time to go out for a sunrise shoot. The other thing is that time of year, you're more likely to get low-level ground fog. So if you've got hills and mountains around where you live, you're more likely to be able to go out on those early mornings and be able to get some really nice shots of ground fog along with the color changing of the leaves. It's really a beautiful shot to get. It's a great shot to visualize and imagine. The problem is you can't predict it. You're liable to go out a few weekends and get nothing. But that's one of the joys of discovery and exploration. MacMan says the New England area has amazing fall colors most years. And that's true of not only the New England area, but all of Ontario and Quebec and New Brunswick, Nova Scotia. That whole area, if you extend New England up into Canada, you get the same thing. The interesting thing is it happens sooner in Canada. It happens when I was a kid in Nova Scotia, we would get those fall colors would start early September. First week, 2 weeks of September, the leaves would already be turning. And then the leaf changing would happen as the temperatures dropped going south. It would happen later and later and later until it was mid-October before most of New England was covered in autumn leaves. So sunrise and sunset are generally, no matter what time of year it is, the best time for beginners to go out and get beautiful shots. And in the fall, you want to find wooded areas. It tends to be full-blown forest. Even if your hometown has a park, in it that maybe you can get shots of. One of the things that helps a lot is to visualize the kind of shots you want to get. Spend some time driving around the area, whether it be outside the city or in the city, looking for these kinds of trees. Again, not evergreen trees, not pine trees, not those kind of fir trees, but birch and maple and oak and the kind of trees that will change color. And keep in mind, you don't have to take a shot of the full tree. You can get up real close to things, especially if you only have an iPhone. Don't think you need to take a giant picture of all of the trees in a particular stand. Focus in maybe on one or two trees. Here's a great shot I found of. Let me just get all this stuff out of the way. This great shot I found of the fall foliage, and it doesn't show the top of the tree. It doesn't show the bottom of the tree. It doesn't show all of anything. It just shows that beautiful, beautiful color that the photographer saw in the shot. So don't think you have to get the entire image, the entire tree in the image. Also look for places. We just went to a little area here called Cliff Gilker Park. And again, we don't have a whole lot of foliage that changes for us, but we do have some of it. And you can look for shots like this, where there's just a little bit of fall foliage, yellow leaves in this case. You can see the green ferns in the foreground and the lovely green moss on the trees. It doesn't have to be a full-blown red fall foliage shot. Look for these kinds of things in the woods around you. One of my favorite shots was this one, which was a very sort of dreamy kind of image of these birch trees. And these birch trees are my second favorite. Weeping willow are my first favorite, but birch trees, for whatever reason, I love birch trees. And I love that the photographer focused on this frontmost branch of trees, of leaves, and let the background get all blurry. You can still see that the background is trees, and you can still see that they are birch trees, but because of a very wide open aperture, his aperture was probably f1.8 or f2 or some sort of low number like that, which allows a very large opening. It makes the background all nice and blurry. So again, don't think you have to get the entire thing in focus. Maybe just focus on one leaf or one branch and let the background sort of fade away, but still give you that color that you can see in the shot. One of the best places to go if you can, is to go someplace where there is water. Water reflections with the orange of fall colors or the red of maple trees. This one is great because there's dead logs in the foreground. The shot is a really well composed shot, and this is a shot you can get at any lake next to any river where the leaves are changing. It's an easy shot to get, but it looks really, really nice when it's composed well, as that shot was. And again, here's a beautiful shot of that kind of ground fog that I was talking about. That look for these kinds of things. If you live near a large body of water, seaside, this is going to be a lot easier to get. Again, you can't predict this. You can't get a weather forecast unless your weather forecast says fog. You generally can't get a weather forecast that says, in the hills today it's going to be low-level ground fog. This is one of those things you just got to kind of experiment and go out and find it for yourself to see if it is doing what you're looking for. There's another beautiful shot of water and sunrise or sunset. I'm not exactly sure where this is. But this is a beautiful image of reflections and the pink sky in the background. It's not specifically fall, although the trees on the island look very fall-like. Um, but there's that low-level ground fog in the hills behind, and a little bit of leaves changing on the islands. A beautiful shot. It's just a gorgeous shot. And this is the kind of shot that you scout out ahead of time. This is one where you've been there to the beach, or you've driven by this spot. You stopped your car, you've gone out and gone, oh, this is interesting. This looks like it could be a really nice shot. And then you can use, there's several apps out there that will tell you which direction the sun is going to come up on that particular day, whether it's going to come up directly behind the island or maybe off to the east or west a little bit. And you can sort of scout out the location that way. Another great shot of just make it a blur. Make everything a blur. I love this shot because we oftentimes think that the blur, or what has to be in focus, is whatever's in the front of the image. But if you can see on this shot, the blurred flowers are in the foreground, and the photographer has focused on the branches behind the foreground. So the middle ground branches he shot in focus. Gives us a really cool, dreamy kind of effect. And again, he's not showing any trees. He's focusing in really close. And this is what you can do with an iPhone. Your iPhone probably doesn't, your DSLR probably has a better zoom ability than your iPhone. So if you can't get a good enough zoom with your iPhone, get closer. Fill the frame with that particular image, with just one thing that makes it look so nice. Another example of beautiful reflections. This one almost looks upside down because of the reflections. And I love this shot because the reflections don't show you the trees that are in the water. It's a little disconcerting. I still like it a lot. Quite often you'll see a reflection and it will show the thing that's being reflected above the shot. But this one, the photographer didn't do that, and there's one leaf in the foreground that's sort of floating there. And this shot, I bet this shot would work just as well. I got to check this out. I think this shot will work just as well if it was rotated. It's rotated once, rotated again. You know what? I think that is the shot. I thought this was a reflection shot, but it's not. I bet that's a leaf falling shot. The photographer got really, really low, probably sitting in the ground, and caught the leaf falling from the sky. That's interesting. I didn't see that the first time. The shot was upside down. Well, fool me once. Again, a great shot of that fog. And this is what we see here in the Pacific Northwest. You see how there's yellow in spots, but mostly evergreen, mostly pine trees. And this is what we get a lot of here in the Pacific Northwest, in British Columbia and Washington, those kind of places. We don't get a whole lot of the kind of fall colors that you see in other places, like all over the side of a mountain. And as always, look up. When you look up, you'll see really cool images. I love this one with all these trees. I don't know what kind of trees they are, but that yellow is just beautiful, and beautiful blue sky above, and these trees reaching upwards. I think it's a great shot. And that's a shot anybody gets. These are not difficult shots to get. These are not technically difficult shots. These are mostly shots about timing. These are not shots about your gear, how good your lens is, or anything else along those lines. It's about the time of day that you go out. It's about the light that you're shooting. It's not about the gear. It's about your pre-visualization of the shots, luck to a certain degree. Another great shot with a wonderful background. It's just one branch with 10 leaves on it, but the mountains in the background and the blur of the background makes this a really, really pretty shot. This is almost a dreamy shot. This is the kind of shot I could see easily. You could print that shot out and have this hanging on a wall somewhere. It's a beautiful image. And this is obviously a setup image, but I really like it. I just love this changing of the colors from green to red. So if you are lucky enough to have to be in a place where you get these beautiful fall colors, please take advantage of it. Get out there, sunrise or sunset. Get out there into pretty areas with lakes and waterfalls and trees and on the ground, leaves in the ground, and get your shots for your fall photography. As always, we get emails from you guys. Love getting emails from you guys. Email from Scott Randall. Hey, Shawn. Melissa, read your piece on the loop about you not upgrading to Catalina anytime in the near future. I feel the same way, Scott says. I don't upgrade to anything until I'm relatively sure it will not present new problems. This is the worst yet. I have quite a few 32-bit apps that I use all the time. Some of them will cost me a few bucks, while others have no replacement at all yet. I really don't know why they can't make the upgrade cycle less often, perhaps every 2 years. I've had to wait to upgrade with almost every recent upgrade. As of now, from what I found out from the developers of 32-bit apps I need, I will have to wait almost a year before upgrading to Catalina. Okay, having a 2-year upgrade cycle would not make a difference to any issues that we're having with Catalina. Apple had plenty of beta time. They had plenty of public beta time. I don't think it would have made any difference. Personal opinion. But if you have developers telling you that you may have to wait a year before Catalina, I'd look for other options, dude. I gotta be honest with you. This has been going on for 2 years now. Remember, Apple said 2 years ago, hey, developers, we're going to do this. Apple said last year when Mojave was released, hey, developers, we're going to do this. Now, another year has passed by. If a developer is telling you, oh, just wait 1 more year, I'm sorry, I'm telling that developer, no. You've had 2 years to do this. I'm going to go find alternate solutions now. I'm going to go find apps that will do what your app did, and your app then falls by the wayside. I'm not waiting 3 years for a developer to develop to do a 64-bit app. I'm going to look for alternatives now and not wait for such a long period of time. Our friend Don Beck, summersweet.org, has a very funny story, and he said I could read it off to you guys. I thought you might get a kick of the good news, bad news I've been going through the last week. The good news is I've finally been cleaning out old stuff like receipts, bank statements, your pre-qualified snail mail, etc. The bad news, I found a sealed, unopened envelope with no address on it. The good news, it had a check in it for $317. The bad news, the check was dated 22 years ago. Okay, how do you even have mail from 22 years ago, dude? And that just blows me away. You have a piece of paper from 22 years ago. He says the good news is the check was issued by a local lawyer who reissued it without question. I was able to deposit it right away. More good news. I've been wanting an Apple Watch since the Series 4 with my veterans discount and an additional 3% back from Apple Card. The found check would just about pay for a Series 5 Apple Watch. Even more good news, my wife said that since it was found money, I could go for the watch. I ordered the watch. It came. Bad news. I couldn't pair it to my iPhone 6 because it required iOS 13, and my iPhone 6 can't be updated beyond iOS 12. After confirming my dilemma with Apple, none of the many options seemed very good. The option I wanted most was to get an iPhone 11, but the most practical and affordable option was to return the watch for a full refund. With my veterans discount and another check that just came in the mail, I could just about qualify for the iPhone 11. My wife's iPhone is a 5S. She was definitely the next one in line for her family to get an upgrade, and there was no way I could get one without her also getting one. And once again, it was too much for us to afford. Good news, AT&T was having a limited time promotion of buy an iPhone, get one free. But only one could be an upgrade, and the free one had to have a new line. So my wife was willing to get a new phone number if I was willing to help her notify all of her contacts. Aw, isn't that sweet? Bad news, there's no AT&T stores here on the island where we live. Good news, we're going off island in a few days. We'll be passing several AT&T stores on our way to Vermont. Bad news. When I called several AT&T stores to check availability and asked if they would hold them for us, most didn't have them. Said they got new shipments every day, but couldn't hold anything, so called the morning of our trip. Bad news. We had to leave the island a day and a half after a reservation because a nor'easter canceled ferries for 2 days. Not a frequent occurrence for us. Good news, bad news. We finally got off the island, but the closest AT&T store didn't have any in stock. Good news. Our route to Vermont took us through New Hampshire, a state with no sales tax, and the only store on our route had just gotten 6 units. By the time we got there, they still had some. So, final good news. My wife and I are now each the proud and happy owner of a new iPhone 11, and I get to use my new Series 5 Apple Watch. Now all we have to do is learn how to use the new iPhone's operating system and watch. It's a lot to learn, but it's been exciting and rewarding adventure so far. Regards, Don Beck. Thank you very much for that funny story, Don. That was, as Monty says, 22 years? Don, I got to know, where was this check? Where was this piece of paper from 22 years ago? Was it in a drawer somewhere? You just toss everything in? Oh, shit. You just toss everything in? I want to know where that... Because that's the most amazing part of the story to me is that they reissued it. They didn't ever, if you came to me and said, hey, did you know that check you sent me 22 years ago? I didn't cash it. Could you give it to me again? I'd go, no. No, you're not getting that money now. Go away. So a very nice lawyer that allowed you to cash that check in. Folks, that's it for tonight's show. I want to say thanks as always to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. For those of you who are curious, Melissa wasn't here because she's tired. She had a long night. Didn't get much sleep. She's not feeling well, so she took the night off. She'll be back next week. Oh, that reminds me. Speaking of next week, I won't be here next week. I'm glad I remembered this. Next week, will be working here. Unfortunately, because of any number of situations and issues, not least of which is our PayPal fund has been severely depleted because of the switchover from one account to the other. A lot of folks took the opportunity, and I don't begrudge them that, to not sign up for PayPal anymore. So in the last 3 months, the money we make from PayPal has fallen through the floor. So what I've had to do is look for and find alternate work. So this is the House Sound Pulp and Paper Mill, and they're having a shutdown starting next Tuesday for 10 days, and they need people to do overwatch. So the contractors go in to what's called confined spaces or potential fire hazard areas, and they need someone on the outside to keep an eye on those areas. And so they've hired me and a bunch of other people to do that. So I'll be doing overwatch at the House Sound Pulp and Paper Mill definitely next Wednesday, the 22nd, and perhaps all the way through until Halloween. So there might be 2 shows that I miss doing this job. Sorry about that, but I don't have much of a choice. I gotta make some more money, and this is a good gig. The downside is it's minimum 10-hour days, so it could be 10-hour days for 10 days. It's gonna be a lot of work. It's hard work. It's gonna be a lot of standing around, but like I said, I need the money. So we definitely will not have a smoke. We'll definitely not have a show next week. The next show we're going to have is hopefully October 30th. Failing that, it'll be the first show in November. But I'll put a notice up on the YML website just in case. So folks are in the IRC chat room saying they need to re-up the PayPal. I'd appreciate that. And if you haven't done that, you haven't taken that opportunity, Shawn at yml.me. You can go to our website at yourmaclifeshow.com. On the right-hand side there, you can click one of the options there. Left-hand side, you can click one of the options there to subscribe to Your Mac Life or send it directly to Shawn via PayPal, Shawn at yml.me. And that way I won't have to do these jobs. I'm kidding. I'm actually looking forward to it. I get to wear a hard hat. I'll wear a hard hat and steel-toe shoes for the first time since college. I'm actually a safety gear, and this is going to be kind of fun. It's going to be interesting. Hopefully I'm going to enjoy it. But yeah, 10-hour days for 10 days is going to be a tough, long slog. So until at least 2 weeks, I want to say thank you guys for joining me here on this Wednesday evening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. As always, I've been Shawn King, and you've been listening to Your Mac Life. See ya!